And before we start, obviously it's a word from our sponsors, but we're going to go into the countdown first, which I didn't get done. Let's go. You don't get to see it. Sorry.
Yeah, poor Gail. She's staring at herself, staring at everybody.
And good morning. Now a quick word from our sponsors, not the same ones we were talking about earlier.
Who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Hi, I'm Gail Rubenstein, the founder and CEO of Retail Resilient. We teach car dealers all over the country how to sell more cars and make more money using social media platforms. Like I said, who says you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Check us out at retailresilient.com or send us a message in the chat bar on the Autohubshow.
Hi, it's Barry here with White Glove Performance Group. Thanks for joining the show this morning. Always great content on here, and a big shout out to Ian and Jeff for all the hard work that they put into this show. Just wanted to say really proud of being a sponsor of this show. White Glove Performance Group, what do we do? We have a cloud-based styling technology called Touchpoint. Touchpoint is used in dealerships all across North America. And the main reason for its popularity is because dealerships can now amp up their team to be calling 50 people an hour. They can leave a personalized voicemail, a custom email as follow-up, all with a click of a mouse. This really speeds up some of the jobs that happen in the dealership, such as cleaning up your recalls, cleaning up lost souls in service, running a private sale, trying to reach out to your database to buy inventory. Obviously, we know that's the way to source it in today's environment. So yeah, whitegloveperformancegroup.com. My direct is 587-899-6600. Love to have a chat with you about some of the things that we can do. But outside of that, I'm going to turn it back over to the host of the show, and hope everybody enjoys it.
Everyone, I'm John Latka from Automotive Business Solutions, where we help dealerships build more productive and proactive by-appointment sales cultures through our Performance Management Partnership Program. So, if you want to increase your sales volume by 2 to 3 sales per month per salesperson, call our toll-free number, 877-708-8484 for a free consultation.
Thank you very much to the sponsors. Hopefully the video was better this time. 3 books. One of my favorites, Surrounded by Idiots, if you're familiar with the DISC personality profile. Actually, I saw a show on the weekend about personalities, about how they don't actually reflect real people, but it was interesting. The Sponsorship Handbook from Pipit Corlett and William Fenton, and Sponsorship and Marketing, Effective Partnerships in Sports, Arts, and Events. Obviously not the ones that we saw earlier today, but the way to do that properly. Go ahead, Jeff.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to all of our viewers on Facebook and LinkedIn. Before I talk about our disclaimer, we had an opening video before this that showed mistakes in sponsorship in F1, and the last one showed a car that was sponsored by Tata Motors, but they were trying to reach out to sponsors, and all over the car had logo, your logo here, this could be you. So Ian, I suggest we get on to Photoshop and we take that picture and put on Retail Resilient, Automotive Business Solutions, White Glove Marketing, and of course, just in honor of Matthew Broden, Google. But our disclaimer is, of course, that the views and opinions shared here in the Auto Hub show are those of our guests and not necessarily of the show, Ian Nethercutt or myself. And please read the disclaimer more in depth if you're interested. Ian.
Thank you. And the year-end sponsor show is the show today. So, of course, we have our show sponsors and a special guest from Google, direct from Banff at the Western Canada Dealer Conference, talking a little bit about numbers in automotive. So let's get right into it. I'm just going to move this over.
So we'll introduce our guests, and very funny, this is probably the first time that our guests have actually had an organic flow to them, because we have our customers and they'll use Google to find out about people. Retail Resilient helps them, direct them to Facebook. White Glove Marketing helps reach out to those people. And of course, Automotive Business Solutions help their people handle all those customers. So moving right along, and of course, last but not least, I will give the speakers here. First of all, we'll have Matthew Groden, who's I love it, the best title in the world, the answer of all automotive at Google Canada. Matthew, take a moment to introduce yourself.
Well, I don't know if I would say all automotive. And I think specifically I say answer of all automotive retail related questions, because there's a lot to talk about in auto. But
you can't answer why Tesla's run so well?
I mean, we'd have to call Elon to know for sure. We'd have to call Elon.
I think he's in a spacecraft.
He might be. He's on his way. So my name is Matthew. I work in the Google Canada Auto Retail team. We like to affectionately refer to that as Go-Kart, Google Canada Auto Retail team. I've been in the auto vertical team at Google Canada now for almost 7 years. And, I've seen a lot, done a lot, but now more focused on working with auto groups and working with OEMs who want to work with their dealers better. So really trying to answer those questions in both directions. Prior to Google, I have another 20 years of experience in mostly consumer e-commerce. I made the joke actually yesterday in my presentation that, when you get hired by Google, they kind of don't care about what you did prior to your job at Google. It's now you're just a Googler. But in the case of automotive, suddenly in the last year, my colleagues are all very interested about my previous e-commerce experience, as are other people. Like what does it take? What does it take to sell something online? What does that look like? And how do we do it? How do we measure it? How do we get more sales that way? So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us, especially when you have a group breakfast or something to go to at a conference, which are always fun to network. Our next three guests need no introduction to the AutoHub fans. And so we don't need to introduce them, but we'll go one by one and just ask them to say hello and make a comment. And on my screen, I have to my first is Barry Jordan, coming to us from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Barry, can you just make a comment?
Yeah, hello everybody. Thanks again for tuning in and listening to the show. I think it was an interesting comment you made, Jeff, about how the three of us, the four of us, actually, if you think about it, actually could take a dealership through from the marketing to managing the database to training the salespeople on the floor. So really, it is quite a cool synergy that we got this morning on the show. Just want to say thanks again. It's a fantastic show. We've it's been incredible to think it's been another year as we make our way through this. So, it's good, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Barry. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate your support. And next in my screen, right in the center, Gail always ends up in the center of my screen, and it's so touching. But Gail Rubenstein she basically is Retail Resilient with a bunch of people supporting her. Gail, say hi to everybody, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gail. I'm here almost every week, except for when I'm traveling to visit clients. But I would say to the audience, if they're in America, happy Thanksgiving and Black Friday. So car dealers, get your ads and get your Cyber Monday and Black Friday stuff going, because if you're not, you're missing the boat.
Well, I do have to say that I've heard that there's some great deals at dealers for Black Friday. There's now 50% on the added dealer markup above MSRP on new cars.
Yeah. So actually, it's funny you say that, because last week we visited a dealer group and we went to 12 of their stores, and the salespeople said, well, what should my ad look like? Do I just say, okay, no big deal, 20,000 over sticker, but I'll give you 18? So
we're only adding 20%.
Right. No big deal. 20 G's above sticker.
Things are bad when a Chevy Spark is 2,500 over sticker,
Yeah.
or a Mitsubishi Mirage. And of course, we also have the king of dulcet tones. I have to say it every week. John Latka joining us from Halifax. I hear you're in a weather warning there, but please say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. And yes, we are in a weather warning. Thus far, we've only experienced some wind, some light rain, but apparently it is going to get worse. So in terms of Automotive Business Solutions, we've been in business for 21 years. Our focus is on employee development, and basically all of our offers, from training to software revolve around that. And I'd like everyone to tune into my podcast, Power Past the Competition. It's available on our podcast page on automotivebusinesssolutions.com or anywhere you may listen to your podcasts.
Nice. John, you have a great voice for the weatherman. Fantastic.
Yeah, all I need is the map behind me, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Cohen is a voice talent.
Well, you know what, John? The car industry was the three Ps were supposedly people, process, and product. But boy, there's podcast and power and positivity. But we'll move right along. Thank you again, everybody, for being here. And Ian, take it away.
Yeah, there's so much going on in the automotive world today. What's your opinion on the state of the business? I mean, obviously, we've got some challenges with chips. We got challenges with inventory. We got challenges with used. Got challenges with, overlist price.
Well, don't give us all the answers, Ian.
Yeah, there's all kinds of challenges. So let's start with John, since you have all the people process and supposedly the voice.
Oh,
talent.
right. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, pick on the guy that opened his mouth.
Yes.
Well, really, you know what? I mean, dealerships and the business, I think, is in a state of flux. We've been visiting dealers the last number of weeks, and people that have attended our most recent workshops, live workshops, I might add, we're all talking about things like inventory. And one of the other things that we're talking about is human resources, finding people, right? So, yeah, we're in a state of constant change while things are, going up, down, and hopefully at some point settling into what we once knew as normal or as close to it as possible.
Interesting. Gail, I mean, you obviously spent a lot of time in dealerships, and obviously if you are looking for staff, definitely check out the career page on our website. There's a bunch of people on there, but yeah, I mean, we've had many shows about rehiring and hiring. So yeah, that's definitely a problem. It seems to be everywhere these days, but go ahead, Gil.
I think dealers, they just need to be, what they normally do is be ready to pivot, right? Be ready to be retail resilient, because with all the stuff that's going on, like what John said, and I'm sure whatever Barry brings up and whatever Matthew brings up, with whether it's inventory or it's employees or it's pricing or it's product or people. I think car dealers are the most resilient people I've ever met, and they will figure it out. I have no doubt in my mind that a car dealer could figure out how to navigate these changes that fluctuate. There's a lot of smart people in the car business. Mm-hmm. So I think the biggest thing, because I read your questions before we hopped on the show, and my first thought was they're going to have to be resilient. They just are. But they always are. Car dealers are always like that.
Here's the funny part, though, Gail, I have to comment. You say they've got to be resilient, yet I read an article the other day that in the States, dealer net profits are at record highs.
Yeah.
So you don't need to be resilient to get rich right now.
No, actually, the amount, I should have stayed in retail, to be honest. Like we do really well, but I probably could have made more if I had stayed in retail during COVID. But who would have thought? I wouldn't have thought that.
Matthew, what do you think? I mean, what does the data tell us?
Well, I mean, it's, yeah, like as everyone has said, it's a very unique situation. I talk a lot in other presentations about change, and I've kind of been, obviously no one could have anticipated a pandemic, but we knew the change was coming. And so my usual statement around that is that, we have, like a lot of things, we have a choice, and we can choose to come at change optimistically, or we can choose to not do that, but that we kind of have no choice but to be optimistic about it and confront it as it happens. I did a different recording of a different podcast earlier this year as part of Think Auto, and I had two guests on it: Brian Benstock, Paragon Honda, and
Mhm.
Jeremy Kosh from Kosh Ford Lincoln in Edmonton. And one of the things Brian said, and it's stuck in my brain since then, is that he described the current situation with dealers as dealers being in a profit coma. That
Mm,
it's too easy to make money right now, and that, they're kind of attributing that to their own intelligence, but that there is no correlation there. That there is no correlation there. It's just the circumstance, and that, this is the perfect time to be, taking some of those profits and preparing for inevitable futures, right? To be preparing for things we know are going to be happening. And I don't see a lot of, some OEMs are thinking that way, are focusing in that direction, and certainly a handful of dealers are focused and organized that way. But I would say the majority are not there. They're not in the, what do we need to do to future proof our business? How do we prepare for the inevitability of a certain percentage of sales coming through digital channels, being, e-commerce or digital retailing? We kind of rejected both of those phrases in that podcast, and really centered it around the notion of the future of retail in automotive is the same as it is today. It's omni-channel, right? And that's the
Right.
way the rest of retail talks about it. So I think the mistake, if you're going to ask what the biggest threat to dealers is today, it's possibly themselves.
mm.
Yeah,
Good
Interesting.
point.
that's a
Yeah,
good point.
yeah.
Barry, so what do you think? I mean, obviously you're involved in helping dealers use omni-channel communication in various ways to reach out to customers. I mean, where do you feel dealers should invest? I guess it'd
Well,
be,
I think,
to lean
like Gail, I
into.
had a chance to flip through the notes prior to, and the first thing that popped into my mind is what Matthew was kind of alluding to um, is the fact that there's going to be a certain percentage that do pivot the way they should pivot. Others are going to be sitting back, patting themselves on the back, saying what a good job they've done. But when this all changes, which we know it will, have they taken the opportunity to actually embrace their database so that they're ready to go? And are they capitalizing on the business that they have at the back of the building, and making sure that that is prepped for when things turn? Because it will turn. We all know, we've all been in the business long enough to know that this comes and goes and the way it happens. And some people are, and to your point, Matthew, some people are just sitting back saying, "Hey, look at me, I'm fantastic." And others are actually growing and using it as an opportunity to actually engage with their database the way their database wants to be engaged, fine tune their online purchasing processes, their online booking processes, just everything that every other retail environment has figured out prior to the car business.
Yeah, we were talking this morning, Jeff and I, before the show, about how wrestling belts are now invading car dealerships.
Right.
I see these every week. It's, oh yeah, look at this. I got a wrestling belt for my car salesperson or whatever. Which
They've replaced hard hats.
Yeah. It's like, why are we using wrestling examples in the car business?
It's just being a champion.
Anyway, go ahead, Jeff.
I very interesting how you brought that up, Matthew, and of course now Barry, after Matthew mentioned that about when things will change. And there's so many people that are, we all are on LinkedIn, and we watch on LinkedIn, and everybody walking around with their selfie stick and taking a picture, videoing themselves, talking about how great people should be. But I relate that to back in 2011 with Toyota. Toyota dealers have been probably insulated from ups and downs of the car industry like nobody else because they got a bulletproof product. But in 2011, things hit them hard, and a lot of dealers weren't able to pivot. And this is the thing, because the question I was going to ask is basically, what are the biggest threats? And I think you hit the nail on the head more than anything else, is the fact that such a threat is themselves. It really is. And Matthew, you mentioned it. Barry, you did. Gail, can you touch on that on that topic, please?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm glad that Matthew brought that up, because I would agree, in any business that you operate, and I have built 2 businesses from scratch, the biggest threat is yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So if you don't create proper offers, or if you don't learn how to change with the times and what's going on in the environment around you, your business, you can either succeed or fail. So you got to look in the mirror and make some hard business decisions. And if I was a car dealer right now, there's a couple of creative things that I probably would do. If I have open real estate, right? So they have a lot of real estate. And if my lot's empty, I would do something else with my real estate to bring revenue into my business. I would also, with the new car inventory shortage. So if I'm not selling new cars, that means that people are going to be keeping their cars longer. If you look at the overall picture. So I would start focusing on service, heavily on service. And the other thing in the industry that's going on is with rental cars. So one of our dealers actually just opened up a rental car facility. So they're using their pre-owned inventory, their aged pre-owned inventory that they can't move, as a rental car center. And you log into the dealer's app and you don't have to go through the airport anymore. You just go to their app, you have a driver pick you up, they bring you the car, and you're good for vacation. So I would start thinking of creative ways to use my real estate, my people, my resources. Because at the end of the day, it's just, okay, how do I bring revenue into my business to provide financial resources? So I think what Matthew said, they are their biggest threat is themselves.
Yeah, we've always been our own worst enemy. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, for the longest time, there's a lot of dealerships out there that simply, I don't want to pick on brands, but they really didn't care about the back of their building at all. They were jamming cars out the front. Everything was F&I, 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 and they gave the car away. They were worried about their F&I number. And they were basically running a warranty department in the back of their building. They didn't care how long the customer was there. They didn't know how many. They had just nothing. Well, now that has to change. That absolutely has to change, because that is going to be the future. To Gail's point, when you've got 4 acres of land that's sitting empty and you look like you're out of business, that just doesn't do you any good at all. You might as well put a golf dome on it. Put something there and do something with it. Because it's crazy to think that 3-4 years ago we would be having this conversation when everybody else was looking to get real estate. Everybody was short. But anyway, it's crazy how it does happen. But so many of those, and Jeff, back to what you were saying, I think the number one closing line in a Toyota store was because it's a Toyota. Well, that just stopped working. And they had to go back to selling cars and doing it. And Ian, I know you worked in Honda, and that was the closing line sometimes, is because it's a Honda.
Yeah,
right?
So
anyway,
it's changing.
There wasn't a closing line. Usually the line that was said if a customer left is, why would you leave? It's a Honda.
Yeah.
And they never, it's very interesting because I spent most of my career with Chrysler. And when I went to Toyota, Chrysler's always been, no, you're holding onto their leg while they're leaving. What if I could give you more money off? And the Toyota people had no idea what it was like to actually sell something. John, your viewpoint or your opinion on the biggest threats other than an atmospheric river?
Well, I think the threat is, and I'm sure we'll all agree, is that, people are going to fall asleep at the wheel because right now, we are getting great grosses and people that we're dealing with, dealers that have come to our workshops lately, what they're focusing on is getting their house in order from an HR perspective and from the future marketing perspective. And one of the dealers was very proud to say he owns a small dealer group that he could be selling for considerably over list price, but he's not letting his salespeople sell over list price because he's concerned about the future and what that will mean. Because
That's
a lot
very
of people
smart.
aren't going to forget what we're doing to them at this point in time.
Yeah. You know, it's something, Gail, you mentioned about real estate too. And you can tell that we're going to be in trouble, or they're going to be in trouble, because the narrow-mindedness, because they're sitting with these empty lots. And you drive by, I see one dealership I go by regularly, a big GM store, has a 1927 something or other sitting in his showroom, and it's a showroom that holds 50 cars, and that's all they've got.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, they're still going, the employees can't park on the property, and service cars have to be parked out back.
Oh my
And,
God.
you know, we're not going to overpay for used cars.
With you, Gail.
Well, maybe he should
There-
sell some Christmas
it's
trees.
like,
Maybe
what
that's
are we
the
doing?
answer.
There was a girl at driving sales, this lady. I think she's their internet director. I forget her name, but at 6 o'clock when they close, they turn it into a yoga studio now. So all the ladies in the community come into the dealership because they've all bought cars there, and they do yoga there at night. Like, if you're not using the showroom, at least let someone use it.
Somebody, in the old
Yeah.
days, you could make it a nightclub, but we can't do that too much right now. But it's amazing. And it's such a good point that people aren't pivoting to doing
Well,
that.
I think something just to add to that is of the people on the show, even the customers that we have are definitely the ones that are pivoting. But let's be honest, and I know I'm talking the truth for Gail and John and I, not necessarily for Matthew, but all three of us are talking to people that don't think they need help. And they're all saying, no, we're good. We know what we're doing. We got it. And they don't. Like, you just look at their website and et cetera. And
Troy's like this.
Yeah.
Troy's like, yeah, Barry.
it's so true. We talk to so many people. They're like, no, I don't need it. And I'm going to speak for myself, and guys weigh in, whatever. But I'm talking to more people that don't think they need help than people who think they need help. And I know what I offer, Gail. I know what you do, John. I know what you're doing, and like, there isn't really a dealership out there that really could benefit from any of our products and our mindsets. And yet there's people saying, no, I got this. So back to Matthew's comment, because I think you nailed it, and give credit where credit's due there. But there's probably more people that are being complacent about their high grosses right now than people that are worried about what the future holds.
Yeah, are you seeing that, Matthew, as dealers say, listen, why do I need to advertise online when people are just going to come and overpay for the cars I got? Like, what are you hearing from dealers?
Yeah, I think there's you see both sides. So again, Brian and Jeremy both talked about how they are using this opportunity to learn more, right? Brian talked about how, as Honda in the US was backing out of kind of the tier 2 space and different types of media, he was pressing in harder because it was effectively creating an environment where media was cheaper for him, and he had the opportunity to scale in places where, say, tier 2 was no longer covering. Jeremy took the opportunity to actually stress test what he was doing, to actually see where's the point of diminishing returns on media across the channels that he was investing in. I think the scary one, though, is, and we're still so early days. I kind of use the phraseology, I used it yesterday, that we're partying like it's 1999 when it comes to digital retailing and e-commerce. Like it is we've thrown back to the early .com era. And I mean that on a few different points. I mean, it's like the technologies are new and they're not perfect. The adoption is, hit or miss, and the consumer experience or their interest is there, but when they start down the flow of some of those DR tools, they're like, what is going on? And halfway through they pick up the phone and they're like, do you have my order for the car? Like the same way they would have the same way they did, 20 odd years ago when I was working at Chapters Indigo, and people would order a book and then immediately call the call center to be like, do you have my order for Harry Potter? Like, do you have my order for Harry Potter? And so we're seeing that exact phenomena repeat itself in automotive. The a vendor was talking to me last night, and he said, he's seeing a lot of dealers pull out of, they at some point in the last year and a half, they enlisted the services of some sort of, commerce tool, digital retailing tool, and now that they don't have vehicles to sell, they're pulling the plug on it. And I kind of liken that to, turning off the lights and locking the door of the physical dealership, right? It's sort of like, if you know that people want to do that, and you've got all of the expense, even on a limited scale of whatever's in stock, of the ongoing cost of the inventory, the facility, the property taxes, the heating bill. Is that more or less than the cost of running your DR tool? I think it's exponentially more money than what you're paying for your digital tools to actually allow people to transact remotely. And so I think we just need to change the narrative. We need to open the eyes of dealers to, it's as important to have that digital footprint as it is to have that physical footprint. And in fact, it's a more effective channel. It's a way you can, in the future, maybe have a smaller showroom, have a smaller staff, because it's this digital offset that's actually occurring that has happened in so many other omni-channel businesses already.
Yeah, I mean, when you see these dealers who, I guess, went from some traffic to zero traffic or minimal traffic, and then they implemented digital retail, sort of, dragging and kicking and screaming.
Kicking and screaming.
Now they're saying, oh, I don't need that anymore. They're coming back to buy. I guess that is great for the next question. I mean, do you see 2022 them getting back on board with digital retail too? Do you see that the new normal, including showroom traffic again, or do you see that as a thing of the past? I mean, I don't think traffic is ever going to be what it was 20 years ago. But what do you think? I mean,
yeah, I mean, things I know to be true, right? Like things that we have seen in the data, and kind of moving into the what does the next year and years beyond hold. I mean, we don't really predict, but we look at the trends. Like we can see in the data what has happened. We've run the Think Auto research now for 16 years, right? With 16 years worth of data, and then we also have behavioral data on our platform, so we kind of have a line of sight into what's going on. We pre-pandemic, it wasn't very common to buy a vehicle online. There was maybe 1% of Canadians that were doing that, and since then, at the beginning of 2021, we're now seeing that that's about 6%. Now, it's easy to look at that and say it's small numbers, but the other way to think about it is it's 6x. It's 6 times the number of people that were doing it, 2 years ago. And if that holds, and we don't know yet if it's going to continue on that trajectory, it means 30% of vehicle sales could be moving online in the next 5 years, right? Like in the next 5 years, and that's pretty material. We also know that there's always been interest in people doing that. A couple of years ago, it was in the 40s, 46% of Canadians would be willing to buy a vehicle online, and now it's 53. There was a moment in the middle of the pandemic, in the early days when we were in tight lockdown in Canada, where that jumped up above 70%. It was kind of like that was the only way to buy a car, so it kind of made sense. And as things did return to normal, it did come down, but it still leveled out at this, like, more than half of people would do that if it was an option. And if you dug into the financials of a lot of, omni-channel retailers like Indigo, Best Buy, and others, you would see they get about 30% of their sales through their digital channels. But the other important part of that equation is where does the research happen, right? And so again, we've seen year after year after year, it's now 90% of the research for a vehicle happens within digital sources. It's digital sources that are used throughout the transaction, and that's true if I'm buying a TV, or if I'm buying a book, or I'm buying a new pair of socks. Like, I'm going to go look for that product online. I'm going to look at the reviews of that product, and then I'm going to make a choice relative to what's convenient for me. Is it reasonable and convenient for me to, stop on my way to the grocery store at an Indigo, a Best Buy, or wherever, a Hudson's Bay company to buy something? Or is it more convenient for me to do that while I'm literally sitting on my phone, while I'm waiting for something else to happen, perhaps while I'm buying those groceries at the grocery store? So it's really about, thinking about the journey is a very complex exercise, and there's so many more touch points, and that you want to be able to capture that wherever the consumer is, regardless of whether that's happening in your physical dealership or happening in some sort of digital setting.
Yeah, we had a comment from Troy, and he said that when they approach customers for an online tool from Roadster, they're basically saying, my customers aren't online customers.
Right. I know, I read Troy put that.
They're special.
It's like, yeah, Troy's 100% right.
So I hit that pretty hard yesterday, and I again, I use this kind of, conversation around, I've done a lot of work in e-commerce in many different businesses and different verticals. And so I said, in 1999, partying like it's 1999, when I was working at Chapters, before Chapters merged with Indigo, people in the bookstores were very adamant that people did not buy books online. That's not how people buy books. That's not how people buy books. They come to the store because they want to get their Starbucks. They want that experience. They want to walk around. They want to walk around, right? It's an experience that I want to go there, and that's why it happens. And then I brought up, there might be a U.S. retailer now, a company that has a $1.8 trillion market cap, that is the largest book retailer in the history of the world. Right?
Never heard of them.
They're not onto anything, though.
Isn't it like a river?
Right? It's a river. Denial ain't just a river in Egypt, as they say.
That's right. That's right. I love that one.
But and then I was like, and then in 2009, I was working. I was part of the founding team at Wind Mobile, and helped launch Wind Mobile, and all the telco folk that were hired, that came in from Rogers and Telus and Bell, were like, people don't buy phones online. Like, people don't buy. I don't know if you know this. I know your job is to build the digital infrastructure to allow people to do that, but like, that's not how it happens. They want to walk into the Rogers store, the Bell store. They want to pick it up. They want to see it. And then I threw up a slide, and I'm like, there might be a U.S. company now that sells 100 million phones online, and may be the wealthiest company in the history of the world, with a $2.6 trillion market cap. And then I threw up a slide that said, so today, the car people are sitting there saying, people don't, my customers don't buy online. We don't sell cars online. And I'm like, so what does 10 years look like? What if it was 10 years for books, and it was 10 years for phones? What does 10 years in automotive look like? And so it's, and then I rounded out the presentation by talking about the fact that there are all of these, new EV startups that no one even knows about, that the people in the room had never heard about. I was having a conversation the night prior with a group of people, and the dealers that were in the little group had no idea who Rivian was. I'm like, well, Rivian came out of nowhere. They IPO'd 2 weeks ago, and currently have a valuation higher than General Motors. So maybe you want to pay attention. Like, maybe you want to lean in there. But the punchline of my entire presentation yesterday was that all of these EV startups are digital first companies. All of them.
Look at Apple. You talk about digital. They just announced that their EV car is going to be driverless.
And
I think
you're not aware. I mean, they're hiring a lot of auto talent away from the other OEMs. So there's definitely some stuff. And I mean, I know Jeff got in some trouble with the Rivian folks taking photos in their office here in Vancouver. So, they were
Rivian
they were not real happy about that.
Rivian is my favorite electric vehicle company, because they have an office. Literally, I'm looking at it almost right now, and I peeked walk by this window. There's a truck sitting there, and there's this whiteboard in front, and it's telling them what to do. Close the doors. The front does not hold an engine. Things like that. It's brilliant, and it's not a showroom. It's desks, tables, rows of them with computer monitors, and one truck. And I kept showing the truck, and then finally one day I walked by and there's a security guard there. It says no pictures.
Well,
but I think Matthew, you made a comment about the experience, and I think it boils down to that. And for the longest time, anyone who spent any time in retail knows that, you know, manufacturers would come in and they would mystery shop their dealerships about how clean their bathrooms were and the size of their tile, and they were trying to give some kind of experience about when somebody walked into the car dealer or into the physical building, how many parking spots was there, was handicap clearly marked, all that stuff, but nobody cared about the online experience. And it has to be where somebody has to care about that, and they actually have to look at what, like, so I bought a car, when is it getting delivered, when is there follow-up questions, when is there, hey, you forgot to fill in this blanket, this is really important, or what does that actually look like? And if whoever nails that, it doesn't matter if they've got 12 acres of dealership downtown Vancouver or they're on a little private lot 8 miles away by the train tracks, it won't matter if you can do a good experience, give them what they want, drop their car at the house, whatever the thing is. I'm not going to get into all that stuff right now, but if you can give them that grade A experience, you don't have to have a $25 million building that looks like Taj Mahal to do that.
Yeah,
I do have to say that dealers are going to start getting used to trying to fill up those giant buildings with something else, because I do believe that the online shopping part is going to explode. And I'm, first of all 4 of you, well, Matthew, your company doesn't have to worry about it anyway, but the other 3 of you are going to be inundated in about 18 months with, oh my gosh, what do I do? I can't, nobody's coming to see me, or this sort of stuff. And the experience is very interesting because up here, Gail, you got a few of them down there, but we have Canada Drives up here. I think it's Carvana down there, etc. And I discovered something, that what the customer remembers about the Canada Drives isn't, and forgive me, isn't the online experience, which they bought it because they thought it was good, but it's this really nice person driving a truck and a trailer with a nice little jacket on or something, and how friendly they were and how they showed them their car. And many dealers don't even have a staff page because there's so much turnover. There isn't a page that shows who it is.
To keep it up.
Too much work.
Yeah.
Too much work.
Gil, I mean, you obviously teach car dealers how to reach out online. And obviously part of that during the pandemic was, how do I deal with that online retail piece and communicate with that customer remotely? I mean, I know we had Marco on the show talking about his Rogers bill from his data when he was selling 40 cars with his phone. But, obviously that was more important to his customers than the building, because they didn't even come into the building. So I mean,
they didn't care how clean the bathroom was. They didn't even see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you seeing as you talk to these? What do you think the future is going to hold?
Well, so Retail Resilient has been transacting 100% remotely since 2017. So our employees strictly work from home. They check in on Zoom meetings. We operate our business the way we actually think a dealership should operate. So when car dealer groups, whether they're new car stores, buy here, pay here's, or used car operators, we teach them how to transact remotely through Facebook, actually. So primarily Facebook and Instagram, because those social platforms are so easy to use that you can utilize those tools as a CRM, and you can transact with them. You can show them cars through the chat portal. You could FaceTime them from Messenger. I mean, I'm a huge fan of social media, huge, because if you can build a business with no website and strictly use social, you can teach a car dealer to transact completely on a social media platform. So when COVID hit, car dealers they were freaking out, and they called us, and we started teaching their sales staff how to, the basics of social selling. But there's so much more they could be doing that they're not doing. So I feel like we're going to be around for a while helping car dealers. But I think you could transact the front end piece of the business, like variable operations, almost 90% transact remotely. I mean, you could probably do it 100%, but you will have a percentage of people that want to come to the dealership. But I think it's a very small percentage. So
I do think that
I agree with you there, Gail. Going back to what Matthew was saying, he's buying a pair of socks, he can buy it online, or he can stop in the store, which is going to be more convenient. But you're going to have a small percentage of people that want to make sure that that black is the right black for what they're doing, and they will want to go look at it and touch it and make sure it's what they want. But it's not enough to build your new plan around.
Right.
Is where the struggle is, I think.
Well,
Like,
I mean, years ago, I worked with a client in the Alberta market. They were in an office tower. They sold cars from other dealers' inventory. I think they had 3 cars in stock, and they were in an office complex. So they had no physical dealership, no service department. It was, and there's another one I think that just started called, I think it's called Cars Near Cost or something. It's another one. And then of course there's Kirby. There's a bunch of other ones. But I think really what it comes down to is, what do you do, whether it be Kazoo or whatever it might be. What do you do as a dealer to, really teach your salespeople about process and about service? Because it's not even about process 100%. It's about how am I providing that level of service based on what the customer wants. I mean, we have going on right now. We've got a guy from Facebook who's trying to communicate with Gail, saying, "Does he see him? Does she see him?" Which I thought.
Yeah, there's people watching us live on my Facebook page right now that are like, "Can you see me?"
So it's all about that network, but more importantly, it's where people want to be. I mean, it amazes me that the manufacturer hasn't really done this. But go ahead, Jeff. I think John had a comment, actually.
Well, one of the things I was going to say is, when we're talking about pivoting, really, we're talking about change. And the only people that are going to change are those that find that, what, I have to change, or those that are willing to change. And to a point made earlier in terms of sizes of dealerships, what's interesting is if you were to drive into a small town in Nova Scotia, Kentville, they're building a brand new Honda store, which is going to outdo the brand new Toyota store that was put up a few years ago. And the Nissan store is en route, and it's going to be bigger than the two of them. Not necessarily the two of them combined.
Forgive me, because
our manufacturers missing the boat? Is their focus still on the big palace?
Well, the question isn't the manufacturers, it's the dealers, in my opinion, because, again, being politically incorrect, they're suffering from mine is bigger than yours syndrome.
Yes.
And they see the other person and they go, I can't let that person do this. And it's funny, I believe, and I could be wrong, many of these larger buildings are actually ones that are with men at the helm instead of women. The women that are running these businesses are going, wait a minute, the cost per square foot doesn't make sense.
I think that the other part that weighs in as well, just to kind of back up a little bit, is the OEM will favor the person who's prepared to build the biggest, shiniest building.
That's true too.
Yeah. So you say, hey, I'm going to put 100,000 square feet and parking on the roof and 18 car washes and whatever, and they'll be like, it's yours.
Yeah.
And so that is a big issue as far as that goes, because the OEM is driving a big part of that. Because I know Vancouver definitely, but I see some of the stores they're putting up in Calgary, and these things are crazy. Like, unless they have an exit strategy for 25, 30 years, like they're massive, and it's not about selling cars now. It's about the biggest sign on the street, right? So
there's a dealer in Edmonton, a Toyota store just opened up in West Edmonton Mall, and their store is about 370,000 square feet. And I wonder how that showroom looks. So we're running out of time, but we want, my favorite point of the show is our quiz time. And Gail, if you could recommend one thing to dealers for 2022, what would that one thing be?
Social selling for you, 2022.
Gee, call me surprised.
I had to.
I know. I
You
said
got a
enough
rap
that way.
about that one, Gail.
Oh,
Let's hear
wait
the
till you
rap.
guys see my rap for 2022. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Barry, what's the best return on the investment for 2022?
I think the dealerships that turn around and look at their database and their service department will be the most profitable. I think they have to take their eyes off their front end grosses. Those are going to be a given, but their supply is not going to be enough. Their volume, they're going to be able to work with isn't going to be there. And I think they have to turn around and look at the customers that have been doing business with them, and they have to learn how to manage those people properly. I'm just going to leave it at that, and treat them with a level of service that they expect.
You know, no matter how digital we get in the world, it's still people. Even with AI, it's still going to be people. John, live or virtual?
Well, I think that many things are going back to live. I mean, just look at the people that attended, the one out west, people that have been going to Vegas. I know people that are coming to our workshops now that we're doing live. The majority of people we talk to want live. Now, having said that, there are many things that we do digitally online, but there's nothing like getting together live. Like, wouldn't this be something if we were in the same room and we were all live and having a great time? Gail was rapping and we were dancing.
Oh yeah, I'd be rapping.
There you go.
My Christmas jingle. It would be happening.
And Matthew, biggest digital mistake from 2021.
I mean, it's been the same mistake for a while. It's that dealers aren't measuring what's happening in their digital ecosystem, right? Or they're not doing it properly. And often the canary in the mine shaft for me is if I take a look at a Google Ads account and I see either that they don't have any conversion set up, like they're not tracking their leads, they're not tracking their phone calls, they're not tracking, DR, digital retail starts or completes, or the other, which is almost as bad, is they're tracking too many things, like that they're tracking, they have 9, they have a modest budget, and they're trying to optimize to like 15 different conversion points, and then they're splitting their budget in a way that they're not actually optimizing to anything. The call out when people ask, my answer today is almost the same as what I said in the podcast earlier this year when I'm in a meeting, when I'm talking to dealers and they ask, what's the one thing that people should be doing, that dealers should be doing in this time of crisis, and I say, answer the phone. Answer the phone. And like, I know that it's not going to sound very digitally inclined, but answer the phone. But the follow-up to that is then also make sure you're measuring those phone calls properly, and that kind of the conversation around that has evolved a fair bit to, then make sure you're measuring both your sales calls and your service calls and decide which one you want to optimize to, right? Like so you can split those out. And if you really just want to focus on leveraging your media dollars to drive more sales and more sales specific phone calls, then you won't catch them all, because people are the problem. They're going to call your sales line anyway and ask for service. It happens all the time, every day. But you can try to segregate those two types of conversions, those two types of phone calls. You can punt that data back into Google Analytics and Google Ads, and then you can optimize to the one you think is most important, depending on what your marketing goals are at that time. So I would say it's really, it starts with a broken measurement, and then it extends into a failure to optimize to the actual business goals that are appropriate for the dealer at any specific time.
Well, great point. I once had a VP of ops who's a person who wasn't my favorite person on earth, actually, quite low down there. And he said something brilliant, and that was about showroom traffic, but it applies to everything. If you want to double your traffic, start counting it. Because it's amazing how many people sit there and go, well, we only sold 10 cars online, so let's double our budget. Or, let's cut our budget back because we're only selling 10 cars online.
Yeah.
Ian, I'll leave it to you to close the show off.
Yeah, I agree 100% with the phone calls, because as I look at data across our dealers that we work with, I mean, there's definitely been a dramatic increase in phone and map directions based on data we're looking at, because customers, even if your car shows an inventory, they don't want to come down unless you got the car. So if you're not answering the phone, kind of ironic, you're missing opportunities. I mean, it's crazy that they're not doing that. Go ahead, John.
Well, I just want to say that for those of you that may be interested, this week's podcast happens to be on incoming phone calls.
Yeah.
Yes.
Brilliant.
What a novel concept.
I can't believe that.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great topic, and
it's very 2022, something nobody's thought of.
I know.
Think 1999, back when you had Yellow Pages and the phone calls. Yeah, phone calls.
Well, it's funny. I have to share this. I remember, and I won't tell you when, it was a long time ago when I started selling cars. We had rotary dial phones, and the phone would come into receptionist and they'd go, sales line 1, sales line 1. I used to have the phone and you had to call, it wasn't line 1, call reception. I used to have a pencil stuck in my phone, past the little Dewey that held it, and I'd dive across the deck, lift the phone up, smack the pencil away so I could be the first one to get that call. These days, it's a different story.
Exactly. We've upgraded to different phones. Thanks very much, everybody. Have yourself a great week.
Thank you guys for all your support. We appreciate it. And Matthew, say hi to everybody at Banff.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Say hi to Mr. Flom and friends there. Mr. Greg Flom.
Oh, I know Greg.
Yep.
All the best, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. See you. Bye.